Ohio gozaimasu. Watashi wa Blake Agohige Gasuke desu. That's become one of my favorite greetings in Japan. And it just means good morning. My name is Blake, and I like my beard. Folks, there's a lot to talk about and a lot to share. First off, sorry for the late video. On the flight back to the US, I picked up a pretty serious bug, and I've been out for like a week and a half. And I'm doing a lot better now, so I wanted to make this video, and I wanted to send it out to you. And I wanted to talk about a little bit more in the video, but I'm going to cut a lot of that short just so I can get this video out first. It was going to be a two-part video. It was going to be part one, focus on everything you need to know, and part two, everything you wanted to know. But I think we should make two separate videos now and put this one out first. We'll see if that ends up happening, but we'll figure it out in editing. So, I plan to talk about, for this video, the ministry-related topics, about sharing the gospel in the countryside and big city comparatively, what that looked like. But I have some good news and bad news to share before we get into the video. We'll start with the bad news first because it helps the video flow a little bit better. As some of you know, it is customary for some people you send out on a mission trip to come back bearing gifts for the supporters. Something that's very small, very inexpensive, from that region as a token of appreciation for their supporters. And I definitely fulfilled that goal. And I bought so many gifts for my supporters, and I also bought a gift for my mom's birthday. That was on Monday recently, and I put them all in one bag. When I finally got home, I could not find the bag. I filed a report with the airport to see if they could find it, and they have not yet found it. I did find some other smaller stuff that I packed and also plan to give out, like a smaller gift for my mom, as well as some chocolates that I wanted to send out as also a support gift, just to say, hey, thank you, and here's some chocolate. But as you'll find out later in the video, I can neither read nor speak Japanese all too well. So instead of buying 2 boxes of chocolates, I instead bought 2 boxes of chocolate cake. So yeah, I done messed up, you know. So I just want to take this time to apologize to everyone who was maybe expecting a gift from me. And I'm sorry I wasn't able to bring you any physical gifts when I got back. But the good news, those who invested in my trip in hopes of receiving gifts, I got nothing for you. But if you invested in my mission trip in hopes of seeing Japanese people come to Christ, I got some very good news for you. You have received maybe a tenfold return on your investment, and probably earned some crowns in heaven, if we're talking spiritual stuff, you know? Because more than 40 people came to know Christ through our ministry in that 10-day period. And I did not stop sharing the gospel with random people. I was meeting until we were over the ocean and headed home. Thanks to the confidence and prayers of those who sent me. Let's finally talk about what our ministry looked like in Japan. Let's finally talk about what the ministry was like in Japan. We stayed in a hotel in Kanazawa that was under construction. A fair amount of the building was missing, actually, on the left side, and they were constantly working on it daily. The mission team was split into 2 different groups, Team A and B. I was on Team B. The Team A, on our first day of ministry, they didn't have a lot of ministry to do, so they actually went out and cleaned the beaches pretty effectively. And they got real soaked and drenched in, what smelled like dirty water and seaweed. After that, they also went to explore the local city and see all the shrines and learn about their gods there. My team, Team B, went up north to a community center in a small town and went through what would be our pretty standard routine for the rest of our time in Japan. We set up chairs and tables for how many guests we think would arrive. We also put out treats and snacks, American treats and snacks. We prepared our lunch for what we'd have with the community after our ministry. We put up our projector and got into our pantomime clothing. The pantomime was our main attraction. for getting people in the door and hearing our ministry. For those that don't know what a pantomime is just like a silent play, to put it bluntly. If we had time, we begin almost every ministry with a greeting and introduction, including something we like. And that's kind of what you heard in the beginning of this video. Then we would go into a song or two. If we had time, we'd usually do Amazing Grace and the Power of the Cross. We then had two people share their testimonies at individual times, either in Japanese, if you could, or English. And if you did it in English, you would have a translator there for translating, obviously.
信仰の真の意味を学びました。そしてその地で私は自分の人生を改めてキリストに捧げたいと思い、洗礼を受けました。今でも週に一度友人が集まり、聖書勉強をしています。クリスチャンコミュニティの素晴らしさは、神様は全知全能なるお方で、生きて働かれるお方であることを知った上で、互いに励ましあたり、チェックしあたり、互いの重荷を背負うことができることです。
After that, we got in place for a pantomime, a silent performance of the Last Supper, the events of the Garden of Gethsemane, and the torture, death, burial, and resurrection of Jesus. Although the play was silent, when the projector was working, it also described what is happening in each scene in Japanese. We also later have our translator help describe what is who each character is and what is happening to the audience. As a common problem we ran into, thanks to the audience feedback, was well, they knew what was happening in the scene, they couldn't tell who was who because we all dressed the same. After the resurrection and celebration of the disciples, we bow, and our church elder walks up and preaches the gospel. And this is where we face the most backlash, as these were apparently government buildings, and there's a rule against sharing religious teachings. So we had to switch up our sermon, but not exactly our entire ministry. Our sermon changed in their words, but at the end of our sermon, we'd also pass out these papers and ask people if they were willing to give their life to Christ. And that's where we saw a lot of people come to Christ as well. That paper actually got pretty criticized by the local leaders. And when we came back and debriefed with our team, they decided, hey, we're getting backlash, but we're just keep doing what we're going to do. We didn't want to hinder the local missionaries and partners that we partner with in that region by doing this. So we kind of had the okay with them first, and they're like, yeah, we're just gonna keep doing it. Obviously, we just wanted to check with the missionaries and partners there, because after we leave, no matter really who we convert, they're the ones who have to cultivate that ministry and those people and spend the time growing them. So if we leave the area in a very negative way, then their ministry is going to falter because of where we went into. But anyways, after this, we typically shared a meal and gave out gifts or food, depending on what the local population struggles were, as advised by our partners there. At this first place, I met a lot of people who were impressed by the size of my beard, actually. And they're also impressed by my physical size. One of the guys asked me if I was a sumo wrestler, and he was apparently a sumo champion in another life. In another life, I'm meaning in his younger days. He asked me how much I weigh, and I responded back in pounds, and he's like, well, we don't understand pounds. I'm like, well, that's a good thing, This became a pretty consistent habit to have people walk up and talk to me, and a majority of people I met, they were often impressed and commented positively of my beard and my size. Actually, oddly enough, they would rub my belly a lot, and that's why I was a sumo wrestler. If I had a nickel for every time an elderly woman patted my belly, I would have an abundance of nickels, because that happened quite a bit. My buddy Spencer actually said that, maybe they're patting my belly because they think I'm Buddha, Who knows? I hope that's not the case. They would also, like I said, they were very impressed with my size, but they would want me to be bigger. Oddly enough, they would insist on me eating more than everyone else. They wanted me to eat at least one more plate of food than everyone else wherever we went. And I hated to oblige them in this, actually. But every missionary will eventually have to do or eat something they're not comfortable with. So when in Rome, you bite the bullet. And I had to bite so many bullets. Still on our first day of ministry, mind you, we actually went to a local construction site where a team of local volunteers learned how to actually build wood housing, which is a pretty common and cheap way to build in that area. Like no nails, no nothing, like just tongue and groove kind of buildings. And they were rebuilding the destroyed homes there, and they had planned to do that for the next 5 years. It's a pretty small team with very little construction experience, except for like 1 or 2 guys. The people of the team, like one's a doctor, one's a firefighter, and some people just are working there to find purpose in their life. When we got to this construction site, one of our leaders actually started chasing around a local chicken. He did not catch the chicken. In fact, the chicken mocked him afterwards. And you'd think I'm joking, but I'm serious. After this guy quit on chasing that chicken, the chicken mocked him loudly. We had a pretty simple task at the construction site. Not a lot of construction being done on our part, but there was a lot of wood scraps and wood shavings and a pile. We basically had to move the pile from here to there and throw that into the shredder. It took a lot of energy. We only had an hour to do it, and I was actually pretty impressed by our team's effectiveness in this way. I'll show you the video, or the pictures that I have as well. The site workers were actually pretty impressed by our work. None of them were Christian, but it's an alternative way to share the gospel by actions instead of words, and we hope that it would lift the morale and understanding of the locals in wanting to know more about Christ. After a bunch of just Christian kids show up, land, and decide to start helping out on the construction site. I think we also had some people we shared the gospel with, but that was not a main focus for our ministry that day. I actually got to talk to a couple of guys there, and they're pretty cool. I showed them the American bro hug, that nearly every Japanese person I met seemed to love. It was kind of a goal of mine to hug as many Japanese people as possible. And from day one to the last day, no one really refused that advance. The local mission team promptly led us to what would become one of our favorite places in all of Japan after we left the construction site. The Frog Farm is what it's called. Our local missionary partner said he wanted to show us this place, and he wanted us to explore it. He then said that he and the other missionaries, who were not partnered with us in this ministry, by the way, had to go and do something else. So they dropped us off, took a car, and all left to go somewhere else. This was not supposed to happen, by the way. It wasn't part of the plan, and it put a little bit of stress on our leader there, and this particular missionary would be a somewhat major stressor for our team the rest of the time there. But he did bring us to a pretty cool place. This frog farm was created and managed by a man who just had an abundance of love for frogs. He was saddened by the harsh reality that frogs should not survive in a harsh environment. And ever since a kid, he's wanted to build a place for frogs. So he built this frog-themed park and swamp, basically, for frogs to live in and visitors come in and enjoy. Everything on this property was frog-themed. The chairs, the playgrounds, the houses, the books, even the bathroom a little bit. I don't know. This place had a treehouse and a small zip line on top of a hill. I didn't get to see it, but other people did. And more importantly, had a major building painted to look like a frog's face. The owners were elderly, and they sold big goods. Where everything sold, was from their farm they owned. And that actually became pretty common, that in Japan, that everything was like a farm or farm to table food. Like everything was fresh. Like the rice there was amazing. I feel like I never want to have American rice again because of how good the Japanese rice was. And oddly enough, the food that I ate at this place became my favorite food the entire trip. But you're gonna hate me for it because it was pizza. Yeah. So the pizza actually wasn't like a regular pizza. It was made. It's a rice flour based pizza. It had several toppings on a pizza I probably wouldn't eat, like the mushroom, corn. You'll see pictures of it. And all these ingredients were grown by his family, and everything of the pizza was his family's, except for slices of hot dog on there. And this man's frog farm became so famous, actually, that he got to meet the Emperor of Japan, as well as the recent Prime Minister, Shinzo Abe, I think his name was. He also got to meet like a president of somewhere. I'm not sure of Japan, I don't think so, or some other country. I really couldn't understand. Our translator was translating what he was saying to us for the most part when we talked to him. This man lived a pretty impressive lifestyle, and he made incredible pizza. We then headed to the hotel to find Team A chilling in the onsen, just relaxing in the hot tub after a good majority of their day. I was a little jealous, I'm not going to lie, but it's okay. I feel like we got to have a cooler day than they did instead of just picking out seaweed out of the water. Not what it's about, though, by the way. Just make that clear. We then gathered everyone and went out for a team dinner, which is a mandatory dinner we had every night. We had a long first day of ministry. Every day from then on was much longer, actually. Our typical mornings started officially at like 7:15 a.m. We had devos and a team meeting. If you wanted breakfast, you could walk to the local Konbini, about 2 minutes away, where they had hot and cold food. Konbinis is like probably the best thing Japan has to offer America. It's probably one of the things that everyone will miss the most if they ever visit Japan. It basically just looks like a gas station. It's a convenience store that sells things that are not for your car, but just high quality food. But it's also like stuff you'd find in your local gas station, but higher quality, like I said. One of the most famous conveniences is a 7-Eleven. They don't sell gas, by the way, and they are loved in Japan. I don't love them too much here, unless I'm getting slurpy, you know? On our way to our ministry, we're either bumping country, worship, or gospel music. The team, and especially our translators, were a big fan of that Kirk Franklin music, which obviously is something I love. We would usually run the same setup 2 or 3 times a day at different spots. And a lot of the time, we would ask the audience if they were willing to give their life to Christ. And oftentimes, there was at least one, but a common problem we would run into is that the Japanese people would not even really know what they were saying yes to. And under some prodding and deeper discussion with them, it's clear that they were not interested in actually believing just yet. A common phrase we'd actually run into is, no matter where we went, was we just don't know enough yet. Which, to translate what they're actually saying, is that they just weren't interested. And it wasn't for you to say, oh, let me tell you more and let you learn more. It's like, hey, no, actually, we don't want to hear anymore. And politely, we're going to walk away now. Now, I'm going to shorten what the rest of the ministry looked like to kind of fit in this video. We continued to follow the same format everywhere we went, but we kind of added that if we were going to a small town and had a like village close by, we would actually go knock on doors, giving out flyers, and tell them to come to our show, like a bunch of Jehovah's Witnesses. You know, it felt very strange, to be honest with you. We told them to come out, see the pantomime, and join us. They weren't given a lot of time, actually. It was like probably half an hour advance. But they had been told before we arrived and also when we arrived. And yet, even though they only had like a half an hour to show up, they showed up. It was odd. It was very cool, actually, to see that someone I handed out a flyer to just showed up 30 minutes later. We had one day off, and this was supposed to be a Sabbath day for the rest of the team. For me, I know that I was only in Japan because people sent me here. I didn't want to take a day off from ministry, and it didn't really sound right to me. So even though we weren't doing ministry stuff, I still wanted to be focused-minded on sharing the gospel. But I don't hold that same conviction against others who didn't have that same mindset. I know that our pastor made it very clear that the team needed a sabbatical last year, and they wanted to implement it again this year. For me, that was not really something I wanted to focus on. I partnered up with a team member that day, and he made it very clear that he had no intention to share the gospel that day, as unless God so obviously put something in front of him that he could not ignore the opportunity that God was presenting to him. He said that he would not share the gospel on his day off. That night, he ate those words pretty harshly. Because after a long day, I would be happy to share the stories that day at another time. It was a very long day. We ended at an onsen in the city. This was our first time that we were away from our ministries, and actually were fully independent from like what we were supposed to be doing each day. We ate good food. We got massages for very cheap, way cheaper than you can do here in America. And more importantly, we actually shared the gospel to at least 7 people in the onsen. I got to personally lead 5 out of what I originally thought was 6 people to Christ, and I had shared that gospel story a little earlier in my last video. And I'll just briefly share what that story looks like. So we were in the onsen, like I said, fully nude. For the most part, it wasn't weird, unless you were there for the first day. The onsen actually was pretty cool. There was like a waterfall you could sit under. There was a hot tub. There was a cold tub. There was a blazing hot tub. There's sauna, steam room, inside, outside. And where this ministry actually took place was the outside version of the onsen. And I'm walking outside, and it's more lukewarm water. You're sitting under the rain. It was a very nice vibe. And, like I said, I wanted to be more focused on ministry, so I was looking for ministry opportunities to see where I could talk to somebody. And there's a pool of 7 guys that I get sit down in the pool with them. And one of the guys immediately gets up and walks away. A very unfortunate, common thing that would happen in Japan is that no matter where you were, the train, the onsen, anywhere we'd go, there'd be at least one Japanese person that gets up and walks away because they don't want to deal with your Japanese or your American butt. So that was unfortunate. But I was down in the pool with 6 other guys. I didn't know at the time, but they were 16 years old and the same baseball team, and they lived in the same area. They actually lived in Kanazawa, which is where we were staying. I later find out that they are about 2 minutes away from where we were staying. A very good place to get them plugged into ministry. We get to know each other. They ask me where I'm from. I say America. They're like, oh, Shotei Otani. I'm like, I know of him. He's in California. I'm up in Washington, 2 states above that. And I said, oh, Ichiro. I'm in Ichiro State. They're Ichiro. Who's Ichiro? They're asking, you know Ichiro? No, none of them really knew Ichiro. A very common thing in Japan that no one really knows who Ichiro is if they're under the age of 30. There was maybe one guy that knew who Ichiro was, that teammate talked to, and that guy hated Ichiro because he didn't have any kids. I don't really know much about Ichiro, so I'll have to look that up. His personal life, I should say. A big part of our intro into ministry there was we were arriving during Easter time. So I'd ask the question, hey, have you heard of Easter? Have you heard of Jesus? The 2 guys on my right had heard of Easter, and the 4 guys on my left had never heard of Easter. The 2 guys on my right had never heard of Jesus, but they knew about Easter, but never heard of Jesus. And the 4 guys on my left had never heard about Jesus either. The conversation was dying out a little bit, but one of the translators, or actually our pastor we partnered with down there, named Talk, he walked to the outside door like a naked angel, because I needed him to translate, as I didn't really speak a lot of Japanese, and they mainly only spoke Japanese. So he came, sat down, and he started to learn, like, obviously how close they were to us, about their understanding of the gospel, and if there was any. And I think we were maybe like the first people I ever talked to him about Jesus. Probably the first. He then asked me to share my testimony, so I did in English and translated Japanese. Then during that time, 2 more guys from our group joined us in the tub. And after I finished my testimony, the translator said, "Yeah, he's actually very interested. They're actually very interested. They want to hear more about this Jesus. They want to hear more about this gospel, right?" So then he asked another guy in the tub to give his testimony. And the testimonies actually paired pretty well together. They're similar in certain ways, and they were even more interested at that point. After that testimony, they kind of wanted it, like they wanted this free gift of Christ. And I think that we kind of then gave them a more full understanding of the gospel. We asked if they wanted to, come to Christ and come to faith, and they all said yeah. Then we had the third guy who is trained in pastoral worship. He led them through the prayer to accept Christ, and only 5 of the guys I learned at that time or later actually came to Christ, and one of them refused, which was actually somewhat of a comfort to understand. Like, they knew what they were accepting and not accepting. Like they had a cognitive ability to say, hey, like, this is something I don't want, it's something I do want. So they did understand, actually, I think at that point, what we were saying, and if it was religious, So there was only 5 guys that came to Christ during that time, but amazing, right? The person that led them through the prayer wanted to also baptize them. A little weird when you're fully naked. The missionary partner said, hey, you can baptize them if you explain what baptism is to them right now. And he was going to have trouble doing it. And one of our guys in the tub says, I got to get up and get my massage because I'm late for it. So he gets up, runs to his massage. The conversations kind of died out, and we tried to get him plugged in. So we followed him out of the onsen, and we gave him the information for the churches, the link to the line group to give him all the information. So I think they're connected now. Very cool. But during this time, one of the guy that I was talking about earlier, who said he wasn't going to share the gospel, him and a couple other guys were following around one dude and talking to other dudes throughout that time. Is really enjoying the onsen amenities, and they were trying to share the gospel with this guy. So every time I'd see him, they'd talk to him again. And when I got out of the onsen, they were talking to this guy, praying over him. Unfortunately, he did not accept Christ, but he said something that was very interesting to me, or to the group, that he's like, they gave him a Jesus bracelet, just some kind of information on it. And he goes, oh, am I American now? By accepting this Jesus thing. And that was kind of disheartening in a way, his association of Christianity was American, right? So he didn't really want Christianity, he wanted Americanism. Whatever that word means, I guess, right? But they did explain, no, Jesus for everyone, it's worldwide, I don't think it really hit this guy's heart the truth too hardly, I guess. It really didn't. He didn't really absorb a lot. What I'm trying to say. We also ran into another group of people who we would run into a lot more in Japan later on. A certain group of bad boys, like baddest boys in Japan kind of thing. It's just a culture of people who want to be like independent and be countercultural. We'll talk more about that later. So that's the story of how we're able to lead 5 people to Christ and share the gospel with 7 people who've never heard it before. After that, it began a very confusing internal problem within myself to see how quickly and easily these people actually accepted the free gift of Christ, instead of hating on it, which has been a very consistent experience for me when sharing the gospel in America. I had to work through a lot of inner turmoil and self-reflection with the help of others who were also experiencing the same kind of problems, as it was kind of like the first time for actually some of them to ever see somebody actually come to Christ physically. It kind of went against everything I'd been told about Japan, of them just refusing to, hear it, want it, or accept it. And it kind of happened all really fast, actually, for me. One of the fun things is that the main leader of the trip had actually made a vow that every time someone got saved, they would go out and get ice cream. And as a way to bear each other's burdens, a lot of us decided to stand with him in this. And from that night on, we actually ended up eating ice cream every night because somebody was saved every night. One of the team members had pointed out, at this moment in our ministry, more people had actually come to Christ while fully nude than those who were clothed. This was changed later on when we started preaching the gospel more, and it seemed more people come to Christ. The Lord was working overtime in the hearts of Japanese people. In fact, the next night at an English club, a Christian leader talked about the major feeling of failure in his ministry after 16 years of not seeing anybody come to Christ. That night, we were there, and one of the kids I shared my testimony with, and several others really poured into, came to Christ. The leader was overjoyed in this. After 16 years of seeing no one saved in his English club ministry, there'd be eventually one kid that came to Christ. And actually, that night, after our local onsen experience at our hotel, we had an onsen at our hotel. We actually ate ice cream again, and that night, a lot of the crew actually, a lot of the boys got to hang out, go to the Konbini, get ice cream, and we had a lot of fun stories about, just being together. And it's one of those nights where, everything's funny to you. Like any kind of joke was just a gut wrencher, gut wrencher. I'm not sure I used that one correctly. Just any kind of joke was just hilarious in every single way. Had you die laughing. There is some funny stories to say for sure. I think one of the ones that sticks me with the most during that night was on our way back to our rooms. We lived on the 8th floor, and we had to take an elevator up. The elevators in Japan are ruthless. They will literally, I've seen them throw men against the wall because they close so fast, so hard on you. They do not really have any safety sensors on them. If they're closing, you gotta get out of the way. And they were quick. The elevators were quick as well. They went up very fast. But we're walking out of our elevator on the 8th floor. It's me and 3 other guys, and I walk out first. The 2 other guys behind me walk out, and the last guy in the elevator is our elder. He's kind of a smaller guy, and we're walking out. We're going to our rooms, and I look back, and I see 2 other guys with me, but not the last guy, but the elder. I'm like, oh, where's he at? And they look back, and they're like, oh, he's gone. Like, did he just disappear in the elevator? So we're waiting for him to show up, and he comes back up through the elevator, the door open. We're like, dude, where you been? And he's like, you guys walked out of the elevator. We were laughing, and the elevator door closed. And I tried to spam the door open. It wouldn't open. In fact, it actually went down 1 floor to the 7th floor, and it opened up, and there was no one there. And then the door closed, and went back up to the 8th floor, and opened. And I could not imagine how terrifying that would be, just to be hanging out with your boys, laughing, having a good time, about to go to your room to go to bed, and the elevator door just closes on you, and you try to get the controls open, and they're not opening, and the elevator takes you down one floor to a completely empty, dark floor for no reason. No one hit the button for 7, and then you just closes, it goes back up. That must have been terrifying. It's a good memory from that night. I can tell more stories about that night, but it's one of those things where you just have such a good day that your night just seems magical. Oddly enough, more people started coming to Christ during this time of our ministry after that last night, and more people wanted to know more about Christ every event we went to. It's just a crazy transition that we had not seen earlier. And later that week, we went to another onsen in the public, and some of the guys, spurred by our last experience, wanted to share the gospel every chance they got, and they ended up sharing the gospel to another guy in one of the tubs. I was not in that tub, but I was watching it from afar. It sounds a little weird considering everyone was naked, but it wasn't like creepy like that. It was normal. They asked him the question, "Have you heard of Easter or Jesus before?" And most Czech people will say no, but this guy actually said yes, which is very surprising. And our partner was so surprised, and he's like, "Hey, like where did you hear this before?" And he goes, the guy says, "Oh, I heard it here before, last year, this exact time." And our leader thought it was very interesting, considering that our team was there last year at that exact time. And he asked, "Well, what was the name of the guy who shared the gospel with you?" And he says, Braden, Brody. One of our guys asked, "Oh, do you mean Brandon?" He goes, "Oh, that's the guy's name." He's like, "You're not going to believe this." So one of our guys gets up from the tub, goes around the corner, and talks to Brandon. He's like, "Hey, you got to come over here. This guy knows you." So he gets up, walks over, and Brandon's like, "I immediately know you." He's like, "Hey, I know you." Turns out these guys had each other's phone numbers, and they had talked before, and it kind of died out. The odds of these two guys being in the same place once again was so low that this guy actually says, he was an atheist before, and he says, "I don't believe in Jesus, but I now know there is a God," which is crazy. It's a crazy outcome. So I guess he'll have to come back next year to finish the job and finally convert this guy to Christ. Let's hope he does. I now want to skip quite a bit forward towards the end of our trip and talk more about sharing the gospel in the city. It was not part of our ministry, so it was more of a personal decision. But like I said, I wanted to, just continue to do it until the end of my day there, because I know that the only reason I was there because you sent me. And I wanted to work hard for what you paid for. And my whole goal was to share the gospel in Japan. So that's another reason why I worked pretty hard there. I talked in my last video, the 5-minute video, about how everything we had been told about Japan, sharing the gospel, and people wanted to know about Christ, was the exact opposite case, where when I was told that people didn't want to know about Jesus, well, it turned out people did want to know about Jesus. People weren't going to accept Jesus, but people did accept Jesus. And it's just been the exact opposite of what my expectations were for this trip. But that was more so true for our ministry than it was for sharing the gospel in the city. And the things that I've been told about Japan before I went to Japan became more and more true the more time I spent in the city. We spent time in both Tokyo and Shibuya, and I preached in both, or shared the gospel in both those locations. And the city of Tokyo and Shibuya was not like any large U.S. city, but people were way less easygoing. They always had somewhere to go. They were very busy. In the countryside, if somebody was 15 feet away from you, they would say, "Oh, sumimasen." They'd apologize. They'd bow to you. Sorry to disrupt your day, kind of thing. In the city, so if someone full bulldoze you, they would say nothing. They would just keep on moving. They're far less likely to listen to you if you're speaking. If they did hear the gospel, they really had no interest in it. They were only going to continue to follow the religion of their parents, is what the most common scenario I ran into was. And also the countryside as well. But we had more success with the countryside. It was just true for both. Actually, Indians. We talked to a lot of Indians, not Native Americans, but from India, and they also had the same kind of problem of, well, they were only believing because their parents believed it. I couldn't really do a lot of this stuff alone, as you have already guessed. Like, I usually ran with a crew of people because you can't really be alone in a big city for the most part. Maybe we'll talk about more of that later. The one of the people I talked to was a Taiwanese man, actually, who had heard the full gospel and rejected it because he just didn't really want to believe in something his parents didn't believe in, and he actually even rejected prayer because he refused to be prayed for. The next group of people we talked to was a group of girls at the place we're eating at, and they were very fun to talk to, actually. They were willing to hear our testimonies in Japanese because I had my 50-second testimony in Japanese locked in. They spoke pretty good English. They had actually been attending a Catholic school, although they were not Catholic. It's something we also ran into. A lot of Catholic schools are at people who had either been raised Catholic in Japan, but they were not Christian, and actually went to a Catholic school. And the teachers were not Catholic, but they taught Catholicism. They didn't believe in it themselves, and none of the kids really believed in Catholicism, but there was a Catholic church nearby. They had a picture of the Pope and the local priest, so it was a real Catholic church, believe it or not. These girls, they listened to everything they had to say about Jesus and Easter, and they were hearing a lot of it for the first time, actually, and or at least understanding it for the first time. Like I said, they went to a Catholic school, but obviously the teachers don't really believe in it. They're not really saying the full truth of it as well. So either they're hearing it for the first time or they're knowing it for the first time, and at least in their adult lives. An attempt to actually give them more information because they had to go. We really had no way of communicating, oh, here's the gospel, because our ministries was focused on the countryside, so really didn't know of any churches nearby. I mean, I'm not even sure if there is any, to be honest with you. So one of the male partners who would help me, I'll share my testimony in the tub, as well as at the previous onsen, as well as here. He's like, oh, well, let me get you guys' numbers, because there's a line chat we can get them connected to, which is for the local Christians. A little weird for an older guy to be asking these young girls for the number, and they felt very uncomfortable. And it kind of was, they wrap it into our gospel ministry with them, our time with them. He kind of fumbled the ball there, I'll say that. So we kind of just sped up towards the end of it, and we asked to pray for them. We prayed with them and sent them on their way. That night, actually, the last group of people we shared the gospel with was a group of self-proclaimed bad boys or hoodlums or criminals or outcasts, like I talked about earlier. They're just like Neo or like Morpheus from the Matrix. They had tattoos on their hands or any visible place. Their intention was to stand out and to stand apart from the exact and be the exact opposite of Japanese culture. If you don't know, in onsens, you really can't have tattoos. It's not allowed. It's seen as Yakuza, adjacent. So they're really hindering themselves here to be and dress like this. This group of individuals really changed my entire perspective of my time in Japan. It was a huge change of what our outcome of the conversation was. We ran into a few people like them on other days, and when I strolled through Shibuya, or as some people say, Shibuya, I ran into a lot of these people as well. They had something to say. They always had something to say. But unlike everyone else in that area, they were always willing to listen to what you had to say as well, which is not something that we ran into too often. They took compliments pretty well. and they were significantly more receptive to hearing what you had to say as soon as you gave them a compliment. And we gave a lot of compliments out in Japan. When telling them the gospel through the translator, I was explaining it. When I explained it, the translator said, "Oh, well, they don't understand." I'm like, "What do you mean he don't understand?" Like, he doesn't understand what sin is. So I try to explain what sin is, like hurting others, stealing, doing wrong, doing bad things, right? And they still don't understand. The closest thing they could contribute sin was to governmental law, breaking the law, or being like a criminal. And that was something they were totally okay with because that's something they were already doing. And that's they really didn't need Jesus at that point. So Jesus dying on the cross for their sins or their wrongs or breaking the law or anything like that really didn't mean much to them because it kind of seemed like that's what they wanted to do anyways. So, I mean, whether it be, through my actions or God's will, they really missed the ball on that one. And it kind of was very confusing to like how you describe the like indescribable like nature of like who God is, right? From like a basic level like understanding of it. Because I have all this knowledge of who God is, and I could tell you like I could debate theology with you like all day long, but to like just break down definition words of like break down the definition words of my definition words is like a very hard thing for me to like put into practice. But I've never really done it before, or never had to do it before actually. Because even in America, people know what sin is or wrongdoing is because they feel like a moral problem. But in Japan, the moral compass is a little skewed in certain different ways, right? Like one of the ways is that you'll find that some, not all, but more acceptable for sure, relationships in Japan, if you are a married man, you can have an affair with multiple women, and your wife is supposed to be okay with that. So morally, you would say, "Oh, this is wrong. This is adultery." Most cultures would say this is wrong, but in Japan, it's very acceptable, very widely practiced, actually. The translator, who was also our partner in ministry down there, he was trying to console me about like what had happened, right? He explained to me that it takes years or even decades to see converts, kind of like the English club who waited 16 years until he actually saw one convert. Explained to me that people really don't understand our Christian needs, our language, and you just have to trust sometimes that one of several gospel touches will reach them. A gospel touch is something that one of the girls on the trip talked about while we were there. And she said through a statistic of like it takes anywhere between 40 to 60 to even 100, like 40 to 60 gospel touches. And that's just interactions with, you have somebody like, God bless you is a gospel touch, and you never know if you're number 1 or 100 through that cycle. And I think for sure I was this guy's number 1 because, yeah, like I said, there's just no understanding. And he never heard of Easter or Jesus when I asked him that question either. He explained in his ministry, he actually, the pastor or the translator explained that in his ministry, you have to really take one things 1 week at a time. You have to trust they're going to keep coming back next week, and some do come back next week. But I think that if there's ever to be missionary opportunities in the city, it would probably be through these hoodlums, these targets. I think they're very receptive to hearing what you have to say, which is uncommon, like I said. And I think if there was maybe a better way to explain this Christianese, that they would be more receptive to hearing it, because they're definitely more receptive to like hearing compliments or talking to you or talking about even America. Obviously they have a little, a lot of Japanese people love America, right? Even if they are, necessarily good people in their hearts. Another good opportunity, I think, would be like a pachinko parlor. During my time in Shibuya, I kind of spent a lot of my free time walking around and going through like dark alleys, basements. To be honest with you, I felt pretty comfortable in these areas because I'm a big guy. I'm like 3, 4, 5 times the size of your average Japanese man, and I feel like they don't got any guns down there. Like maybe they might shoot me, but more so they'll maybe pull a knife on me, and I could probably take it. Maybe I don't know. Maybe I'm overestimating myself, but I'm quite a bit bigger than a lot of these guys down there. But one of these guys actually, and I said, hey, I have a lot of free time. What should I do? They're like, hey, you should go to the pachinko parlor. So there's a group of guys who walked me through pachinko parlor, which is gambling. Gambling is illegal in Japan, but this is like one of those loopholes, kind of like some kind of way to pay for their next game. And there'd be smoking places inside these pachinko parlors. There'd be like 5 floors of pachinko games, right? And like there'd be like a smoking place on each floor that you could go for your next dopamine hit. There's a lot of the hoodlums. They hung around these areas as well. It was kind of really sad to see. But it's also very relative, also in here in America as well. To any gambling addictions. When I left Japan, the next day after that, I kind of left everything on the field there. I came back with no energy at all. I put 200% of myself there. I dedicated everything I had to that mission and making sure that your money and your prayers were put to good use in me. I put so much of my energy into this, actually, that I actually got sick on the flight back home and was out for about a week and a half with a really, really bad bug. Hence the late video, as I've already mentioned. Well, everyone's been wondering, are you going back, Blake? I'm not sure, honestly. The path to mission work through Canyon Hills seems pretty far away, honestly. It seems like at least 5 years before you actually get to start your mission and wherever you go. And I'm none too keen on actually requesting money to people, even though I requested your money. It just seems. I guess I have some biblical viewpoints that are a little different, I guess, right? But they say it's a good way to get you involved in the ministry if you obviously can't go. Like, for example, so the missionaries will spend, after they finish their training, they will go spend the next 2 years in that country learning the language. And I just don't love the fact that I'll be being paid by people here to learn a language somewhere else for the next 2 years, as I'm not even actually doing ministry yet, really officially. And who even knows what's going to be like in 2 years, or what my mindset will be after 2 years of being in that country. If some people decide, hey, I'm done, they just come back, and it feels very wrong in my mind. I hope never to be in that scenario. And no shade on anybody, I just don't want to be one of those missionaries that takes up support to go to a foreign country, starts a family, and has a kid, and says, "Oh, this country isn't so safe to have a kid anymore. Let's go back to America where there's good health care and all stuff like that." Well, there's not really good health care, but there's good health options. As much as I love Japan, I also had 2 uncles who lived in Japan, and they loved it over there, but eventually they always came back. So what I hear from people who lived in Japan or from people from Japan, they love Japan, but there's just a emptiness that they feel, even those who are Christian, they feel in Japan. And I didn't feel any of that. I was there for 10 days though, so that's nothing. Yeah, so I want to have more time to figure that out, I guess. So just some raw thoughts on what a return trip to Japan actually might look like. No advanced planning whatsoever, but I'm sure there's better options for what I'm about to say. One of the options would be a work visa, maybe a work visa through actually the construction site I talked about in the beginning of the video. Helping them build houses there, learning how to do that through tongue and groove wood construction, which is also be a good skill to learn, I guess, just to figure out how to do that. I would ask them for a work visa, and will I work and learn the trade of the construction. Also get to learn the language, and I get to share the gospel with them daily. This would not be like a through Canyon Hills ministry. This would be like, oh, what would you personally do? So I get to just really be in the ministry that I was already a part of down there. That'd be cool. And obviously this group of construction workers or volunteers are already being like the hands and feet of Jesus without being, with Jesus. So I feel like if you had these people, come to Christ and they could share the gospel and building houses for people for the next 5 years, like that would be an incredible way to really just share the gospel throughout Japan. If we were able to convert these guys, obviously. I also probably would be asking for financial support during this time. Hypothetically, if I were to go. The other option would maybe be to get a work visa through the missionaries who own businesses there. One of the missionaries we talked to, he actually employed 2 or 3 other people who were missionaries also there, but his work was accounting, and he'd pay for people to come to work as accounting, kind of like you need like a cover to go into a country. You can't just say, oh, I'm going to a country to preach the gospel. It doesn't really work for the governments there, But so that's one way to like just ask basically for him or someone else's support to support me by hiring me for your business, but really help me be a missionary. One of the guys we talked to down there, he ended up in Japan when we asked him. He was a missionary there. He said, and I hope not to be like this guy, in a different kind of mindset, like a solo ministry down there in Japan. If it failed magnificently, is what he said. So he said after it failed, he found this guy who, he partnered with in ministry. Maybe another way is to get down there is both my uncles that lived down there are also Christians as well. So maybe they would be open to help me set up maybe just brainstorming here, like a way to like get a job down there or have they connections down there. But if we're just brainstorming here, if I did see fruit in this ministry if I was down there, then maybe I would come back and ask for financial support. Only if I had like actual proof, like anything I was doing was changing lives. Because like I said, like when we're in that one onsen, 5 people came to Christ, and then in the city, like no one came to Christ. So there's really no guarantee that anywhere like anybody goes, really like that there's going to be change. Yeah, that's But I mean, that's as far as brainstorming goes to like going back. But to be completely honest with you, like I might just stay here, marry a girl, settle down, have a kid. Like I got to do a lot of catching up to a lot of you guys who supported my trip who were having kids already. We'll see what the Lord has in store for me. We'll see where He opens doors and windows and closes them in my life. This is pretty much the end of the video for all you need to know, all you kind of like a little bit what you wanted to know about my thoughts were after the trip. The next video is going to be more unscripted. I have a script for this entire one, like I've said. This entire video, a lot of it is unscripted. I'll say that, but for my next video, it's going to be mostly unscripted, and I'll just be going through a lot of the stories, the pictures, the videos we have in Japan, and maybe narrating that. Thank you all for supporting my trip, either financially or through prayers. The outro for the video is arigato gozaimasu. Goodbye.
Boku 手をつなぎましょう。